If you've been thinking of getting into user interface design, you've probably heard the word Photoshop a lot. Photoshop has been the go-to app for designing interfaces for years. The problem with Photoshop is that it was never really meant for UI design. We've all managed to hack it to work for us, but it's not been designed specifically to deal with UI design, which makes some of the elements of designing with it clumsy. I'd like to introduce you to a new app specifically for UI designers called Sketch by Bohemian Coding. Its price tag is much better suited for anyone starting out, and it's been specifically built for UI designers. As someone who used Photoshop for years and never thought I'd use anything else as fast or as well, Sketch became a real alternative for me, and I'd now never go back except for photo editing purposes. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and jump into the actual UI design, what's called high fidelity UI design artwork. Now, what I've done here is duplicated our original set of wireframes because they were quite clean and quite neat. It gives us a really good starting base to start layering the colours and icons back into this project. So I'm going to go ahead and start bringing this to life. First thing I'm going to do is select the header and select a nice bright colour for this. I'm going to go with more of a marine blue colour. Obviously, you can do whatever you want with this. You can bring it to life however you like. These assets up here, I'm going to go ahead and change those into white to better fit our app. For the developers, however, this is a really easy thing for them to change out. All they do is select it within the code. But for the purposes of our design looking nice when we hand it over and for clarity so that they don't think we want it in black, we need to go ahead and change out all of these assets to white. So I'm going to do that now. Okay, now we've saved all of that back into white. It's looking a little bit neater and a little bit more on brand. So I'm going to go ahead and keep just moving through the app and just experimenting with some colours. Normally what's nice to do is select the same shade as one above so that you stick within the same group of colourings and simply move this slider on the right hand side. Simply move the slider around within the same group of colours. It means that your app has a more uniform look to it throughout. I'm going to go ahead and do exactly the same thing with the colours within the app for the actual text. We want this text to sit darker, ideally, than any of the other blues because we need it to stand out. Sometimes people might like to keep the text within black. Personally, I always like to stay just off of black, even if it's a slightly warmer tone of grey. I find it slightly easier on the eyes, and if you're using certain colours, it's less jarring on the eye, so I like to do that. I'm going to go ahead and just change this in the same way. Where we have depicted icons in the previous wireframes, I depicted all the icons with a small dot. We can go ahead and change that out now. So I'm going to use a file that previously I exported all of my icons into a sketch file. I'm going to go ahead and use this file so that I can bring in those icons into my design. And that's just simply, me holding down the wrong button. That's just simply copying and pasting into one file from the next. So this is not the right, is clashing too badly with this icon colour. What we need to do is make sure that the legibility is good on this. Now, I don't particularly want people to see that as dark as it is because I want the icon to stand out more than the container that it's in. I want people to know that they can click on that to add a picture for the day. So I'm going to take that fill down. All I did there was click on fill in this right hand side. click on fill, and I'm going to just notch that one up to quite light grey so that the icon stands out from that rather than its background. I'm going to work on through adding in these icons back into where we depicted an icon in the high fidelity wireframes that we did. So we need an icon for location here. I'm going to go ahead, select that and copy that into the app itself. And I'm going to push that next to or near to it so that it is part of that same action. Here, I'd quite like this, the 0, to be bolder because it's the one thing that's going to change and show people how many characters they have left within their thought for the day. I'd like it within a certain number of characters if you're in a safe number of characters and not getting near to 200. I think I'd like it to be more bold and green to show that you have loads of characters left. A nice feature might be as you edge towards 200 characters that maybe it turns red to show you that you're getting close to the limit that they've set within the app. Here, I want to add in buttons that show clearly that we can depict bad, average and good days. I think it would be really nice to add colour in here. So for bad, I'm going to draw a rectangle. All I did there was head up into the shapes panel, top left, select a rectangle and draw a rough shape for that area. I'm going to remove the border that Sketch automatically puts around it. I'm going to change the fill to a red. I'm going to start with the average red colour that they give you in Sketch, but actually it's far too bright for this application, I think. So I'm going to move it to be a slightly warmer red. Now, the reds on this side of the panel actually sit more in the pink, so I'm going to move it right over to the left. And I'm going to give us a slightly warmer red that's not as bright as the previous one. So for this bar, it's going to be easier for us to actually group this so that we can toggle it on and off while we have a look over the original wireframe artwork. In order to put it into its own group, you just do Command G, which is exactly the same Photoshop command that we've used. If we just label this into panel, it's just for easy reference, so whatever you find easiest here. And I'm going to go ahead and rename this as Bad Day. I then want to add exactly the same rectangle in for Good Day. You can just add these in without really worrying about the sizes of them right now. We just need to get them, we need to get 3 in a line ideally. So I'm going to do exactly the same and sort of notch it to a warmer green rather than a really super bright green. Our Good Day actually sits all the way over to the right. I'm going to do the same with average. I just copied and pasted that box, Command C and Control Command V. And average, I'm just going to sit that within grey, so we're not actually really going to depict average days. We only want the 2 extremes. Okay, so we want to go ahead and make these 3 sections roughly the same size as one another. Ideally, they would be exactly the same size as one another, but unfortunately, the width of the iframe, which is 640, does not divide beautifully by 3. So I'm going to take this first section, and dividing that into 3 brings a pixel value of 213.3333 recurring. So we're going to go with 214 on the 2 coloured panels, and hopefully bringing the middle one in. Just going to nudge that one over to the right. We're going to bring this middle one in at 213 and see where we sit. Okay, so I want to go ahead and delete everything that's sitting underneath this currently, which is what we used for our wireframing, because as you see, some of it's poking out the edge and making it look blurry in some instances. So we need to get rid of some of that that's underneath. So all I'm doing is simply toggling in the left-hand side. You'll see this eye icon. What that does is toggle visibility on and off for this section. So I'm going to go ahead and toggle that off. I want to reuse these labels because they're exactly the same as we will be using in our app, but I want to get rid of this Chrome that we've used previously in favour of the new stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and toggle this back on. And these labels, I'm using Shift to select all three of them. Now what I need to do is bring those up and into that panel. So all I'm doing is lifting from this section up into the panel that we've created. And then I want to just double check that all of these are aligned, which at the moment they look slightly off. We can do this by selecting each of the three sections and using again the alignment panel in this top section. We want to use this one here, and that will bring all of those perfectly in line with one another. I then want to go ahead and just align these labels into their correct sections. So we have bad, I'm going to double click that and change that label to white. The same with average. Change that to white, and the same with good. I then want to bring in each of those icons that are associated with those as well. So I'm going to go ahead and go back to our icons and copy into bad. Same again with average. As you see, the red line that pops up in Sketch is making sure that it's aligned with the previous element that you just added in, which is a really nice feature of Sketch compared to Photoshop. Photoshop does do a similar thing with smart guides, but it's not actually as clever as Sketch seems to do it here. Oh, just selected too much. We're just going to do the same with good. Now I just want to realign some of these labels slightly so that they're a little bit nearer the icons that we've just added in. So if you hold down Alt, you'll be able to see pixel values of each element. So you can select the boundary box around an element and then hit Alt, and it will show you how many pixels from the top, bottom, left and right an element is. So you can make sure that for each of these boxes they're perfectly aligned if they need to be. So you can make sure that every label sits exactly 100 pixels from the left-hand side of the box that it's sitting within. So I'm going to go ahead and do that for each of these. So as you can see, this is sitting quite off. So I'm going to go ahead and change these labels so that they're all in one alignment with one another, the same as the previous labels. So you can see here that they're all in good alignment and all of the text labels marry up with one another. You could go ahead and tweak these so that you can make sure that the icons themselves are in the same position. I'm going to move on because we've got a lot to get through, but you can tweak those to your heart's content and ensure that they all look great within the boxes that they sit within. So we'll just zoom out and double check that that looks okay for the moment, which it does. So I'm going to move down and have a look at this entry that has already been formed. What I want to do is double check that this is exactly the same size as this element. So I'll go over to the right hand side and see that it's 104 by 104. Just looking at this, it looks slightly smaller, which it is. So we need to change that to exactly the same size. Again, if we move this around in Sketch, it will show us when we're in perfect alignment with the element above, which we are now. And what I'd like to do is pull in a photo to show you how you can use this as a mask. So I'm going to go ahead and just pull in an example photo that I found online, which is very, very large. I'm going to just zoom out and change this so that it's a lot smaller. All I'm doing here is just transforming it so that it's a smaller asset. And I'm just going to overlay it here. So I'm going to move this out of the way for a moment to show you how to mask two sections together. So just hovering over this circle, you'll see in our layers section, it's automatically pulling up oval 12. So I'll just select that. What I'd like to do is move that up to where the bike image is that we've just selected. Now, if we put that over the top of our oval, you'll see there's a bounding box around the outside which shows you what element of the photo is actually going to be cropped. We can head right up here to mask, and what that will do is use the circle underneath the bicycle image to create a crop, which is quite easy. If you're used to doing stuff in Photoshop, you'll be used to it slightly differently. But this creates a nice mask of the bicycle image, and you can do that for anything within Sketch itself. So here, I just want to change the date to a different colour. I'm going to go ahead and just double check what we used in the one above. So I've used a custom colour here, which is a darker blue. What I'd like to do is save that darker blue so that we use that and that it's the same blue across the whole app. And I can do that just by simply adding a preset. So if you just click that button, it will add that blue into your repertoire of colours, so you don't have to keep going back and reselecting. So I'm just going to double click this date, select it with Command A to select the entire date, and just ensure that we're using exactly the same colour. I also just want to take a look at what's called the leading, which is the line height between paragraph items. It's okay here, perhaps slightly too tight, so I'm going to go ahead and Command A, select everything. And I'd like to just select the line height to have slightly more space between the elements to make it easier to read. So I'm going to go for 34, which is just 2 notches above what it's set to on auto. Unfortunately, there's not really a good mathematical way of telling you about line height. It's something that you have to learn and something that you have to just get used to seeing whether your eye can read comfortably text that's within an app, or even on the web is a really good way to train your eye. Read up about leading on the internet if you really want to dig deep, but just get used to actually tweaking that and having a look at how that looks within an app itself. I think I'd also like to change the dates to stand out a little more. Some of the weights of these text items, they all look quite similar and nothing's really jumping out at me, whereas the date is actually something that is going to be a title for each of the sections. So I'm going to change that to Helvetica Medium throughout the app for any dates. Again, this is something that you can just get used to training your eye for. You just need to sort of look back from a design and have a look and see whether there's anything that's particularly jumping out at you, or whether the right things are jumping out at you within your design. If they aren't and everything looks like it has a similar hierarchy, you need to have a play around with the type weights and font sizes of things within your app. You will get used to doing this. It's one of those things that, unfortunately, again, it's time spent doing things like this, but hopefully tutorials like this will help you on your way. So there we have it. There we have our first page of the app. Let's go on to the second.